casual, informal talk through our vision series, just to give a bit of backup and try to unpack it all a bit. And last week, a lot of the communities were covering the second vision statement, which I'll read out just to refresh us, and then we can all chip in and just try to unpack it and unpick it a bit and question what we're getting at here. So we have a dream in Medway and Beyond of a church that effectively demonstrates the gospel is good news to the poor in a variety of life-transforming ways.
Come on.
So where do we start with that? Obviously, if you missed the preaching, go back and listen to podcasts, and you'll be able to pick it up on most of the communities. But where should we start? What's a good place to begin, do you think?
I wonder, how can we define poor? Because I think in so many different countries, cultures, it can mean so many different things, and we all probably imagine what we think, but I don't know what.
Yeah, and do we even like the word poor?
Yeah.
No,
I don't like it.
No.
Can we find another word?
Yeah, why don't we like it instinctively? What is it? It's like, oh, we're here to help the poor. Why don't we like that?
I think it puts like a them and an us for a start, doesn't it? Yeah.
It makes you almost superior.
Yeah.
It has this hierarchical sort of sense about
That's
it,
true.
that we're better off in some way.
Yeah.
Which is not what we want.
No.
That's not what we mean by that, is it?
No. Exactly.
So what do we need?
Yeah. So we're not just trying to set up some projects and it's like we have all the answers because we're so well resourced and rich in every way. Here we'll help some people that are poor. That's not it, is it? I think we're using that phrase because the Bible does talk about poor, and it also uses the word needy.
Yeah, I like that word.
Yeah, which then you feel like, well, that's
me. Exactly.
We're all needy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So in terms of like thinking about the poor, that's a good question. So we're thinking about different categories of what we mean by poor and needy. And so if we're thinking particularly globally, then you've got absolute poor, which would be no food, or you're not sure about where the next meal is coming from, and shelter and clothing would be like absolute poor, which would affect some in the UK. There are some which might be shocking for us. That would be the kind of category of some. And then you've got what's been defined as relative poor, so within the country or the context you're in. So in the UK, there was a study done recently where it would touch on things like, I'll just read a few out. So if you don't have access to things like adequate heating, a damp-free home, a couple of meals a day, ability to repair electrical goods, warm waterproof coat, able to keep up with dental treatments, there's a list of things like that where if you remove all those, like relatively speaking, in the UK, you would be classed as having needs, and in that sense, you're poor. But then there's also other categories we could think about, which would be aspirational poor. So you're hopeless, you're depressed, you don't think you can achieve or get out of the problems that are weighing down. There's also relational poor, where you don't have any backup, family, friends, not reliable or not there. And then, of course, there's, for us as Christians, where we'd say, that's us, the spiritual poor. Everyone's in that category. So we're all needy in that we all need help from God, who has all the power and riches and wealth and ability, and he reaches down to help us and lift us up. So we should all be starting from that point. Does that make sense?
So
anything to chuck
absolutely.
in? Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I suppose when you were talking, I just started thinking about in Acts where it says they all shared everything they had. So I suppose any time or place, whether it's aspiration or material, spiritual, like why should we be living in a society where some people have a lot and some people don't?
Yeah.
So I suppose when we talk about remembering the poor, we're looking, aren't we, to redistribute that imbalance.
Which should happen in the church. For starters. No, that's really good.
Because I suppose if you believe that God values everybody the same, which we do, then why should I have this much, whether it's aspiration, houses, like food in the fridge, and that person doesn't?
That's so true. And actually, I think in one of, I'm not sure where in the scriptures, but it talks about how people have possessions to share their possessions, share what they have. Some don't. Share what you do have with others. And I love that actually that's what radically transforms society. People look and go, you're living different. You're not hoarding things, you're actually giving things away. You're being generous. You know, what's that proverb?
The generous,
the world of the generous and is enlarged. You know, it's beautiful. And so I think you're right. You know, it's a different way of living and viewing things that we own and things that we have, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're told, aren't we, in places, books like the Book of James, about like our actions to share with those that don't have, the attitude we have to those that come amongst us or that are on the fringes, not to treat people differently. And certainly not to treat, like in James, it talks about not treating the wealthy better than those who are needy, like giving preferential treatment. And, we're taught to give and share coat and warmth with someone. We can't just pray for them and say, God bless you to our brothers and sisters in Christ.
Absolutely.
We've got to share what we've got. They've got needs. So can we sort it all out? Because if it's something we know is important, and there's loads of scriptures, aren't there? Lots of famous ones. A lot of Christians will know, in Isaiah 58 and Isaiah 61, which Jesus used, like in his first message, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord's on me to bring good news to the poor. And Isaiah 58 has got that the section in there where God is speaking to his people and saying, the way that you go about your so-called religious devotion to me, your fasting, your praying is of no value to me. And he corrects them, and he challenges them, and he rebukes them, because they, on the same day in the same week where they'll be fasting, they're mistreating their fellow workers. They're not lifting people up. So it's like there's an abuse and neglect of the need at the same time as doing religious duties and performances. And that's a challenge for us, isn't it, as Christians?
Absolutely.
Like, that we go about our Christian lives in the same week. We're like blinkered and blind to needs around us because we're too busy, or we've got our minds set on our own goals and ideals.
Well, it's interesting because that passage, what really struck me about that passage was where it said they didn't understand. Here they were fasting and doing what they thought was right, seeking God, and then they say to God, well, actually, why aren't you listening to us? Why aren't you answering our prayers? We don't get it. We're fasting. We're doing what we think's right. And as you said, they're actually mistreating their workers. They're not feeding the poor. They're oppressing oppressing people and all that kind of stuff. But what struck me was when God said to them, the people of Israel, it says they seem eager to know my ways, but they actually don't, which really struck me. And God almost pulls them up and says to them, you're doing a day fast, and trying to sort of connect with me. This is a life fast, it's a lifestyle. And he says to them, what about, as you said, the poor, the oppressed? What are you doing for them? And it really challenged me. It's like, it's not about a day, fasting a day. It's about a lifestyle. So it's not about us just doing something at Christmas time because we think it's really good. Let's do something for the poor at Christmas time. it's about our day to day. What's God asking us to do, isn't it? You mentioned something about that earlier, Susie. What did you?
Was that about? Well, I was thinking about Proverbs.
Was it the Proverbs one that you'd?
Yeah, I mean, it just dawned on me, I was thinking, because Proverbs is full of reminders to remember the poor and to think about how we treat the poor. And I've been thinking that Proverbs is a book that's about us growing in wisdom. It's not. And so what struck me was that we think of looking after the poor as, for everybody else. Actually, Proverbs is a book about, as you grow in wisdom, your own life is blessed.
Come on.
I thought, wow, it's like God saying it's actually wise to look after the poor, because something about that will bless us. It's not like we're even doing it for other people. So like you said, it's a lifestyle. It's not just you do it, and then I, kind of following that train of thought, that's so that our life becomes better. I suppose we become more like Jesus, don't we? That's the thing. He's the ultimate wisdom. So if he's the ultimate wisdom, as we're looking after, we're becoming wiser and we're becoming more like Jesus.
And that's what's beautiful, isn't it? It's a glimpse of who God is, that when we act that way, when we help the needy, it's what you said, I think, a while ago about Moses and
so that's links to that, doesn't it? That it's not, we can do something to change the world, because we would talk, it does change the world, but we were saying earlier, Jesus said, Matthew 26:11, you'll always have the poor with you. And in the Old Testament, God said to his people, Deuteronomy 15:11, there will always be poor people in the land, so be open-handed towards your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy. So if we do enough work and projects and we all share, will we eradicate global poverty? I mean, we might make a good stab at it, but it's a long, hard job, because the human heart is selfish, and if people don't know God, you wonder how far that generosity will stretch. So it's not just, if we work hard enough, we can make it go away. So it must be also about, we're reflecting God. It's part of his character. We grow, we become like him, because he's the ultimate one that helps those who have spiritual need, and then everything else kind of after that. So it's us being like him. And then I think what you were referring to is where God revealed himself in different places, deeply, to Moses, Exodus 33. And when he shows Moses his glory, it's amazing that he doesn't show him his glory by doing an amazing fireworks display. And Moses had already seen waters parting and burning bushes and miracles. So he'd seen glory in terms of, wow, God, you're powerful. But God says, I'll cover you. You can't see my face. Almost like there's more to see, but I'm going to show you even more than you see. And then he talks about, I will proclaim my name. And then he says, I'm the Lord, gracious and compassionate and slow to anger and abounding in love. So it's like the greatest revelation of who God is shown to Moses at that time was those attributes, which means you're showing grace and compassion to others, you're loving them, and it's pointing towards his most gracious and loving act through Christ, his life and his death, where he lowers himself down into the neediest part, if you like, of the world on the cross, and descends down into poverty. He became poor, so that we might become rich in God and all that. That's what God does. So we've got to do that. We've got to do that till we die, because that's who God is, and he's still doing it. He wants to do it through us. So we may not be able to make it go away, but what can we do? I know we were talking earlier about just different ideas and stuff that has gone on. What's been going on in the last few months?
Yeah, actually, it's been exciting. Well, first thing I want to say, that's spot on, we reflect who God is. And that's huge, because God longs to reveal himself to people. He longs for them to know that he deeply cares and deeply loves them. So I think that's amazing. So I'm glad you said that. the other thing is, do you remember a couple of months ago, guys? Actually ages ago, like it might have even been 6 months ago, when you introduced us to a questionnaire and you got us to do it in our staff meeting. It was almost like a discipleship questionnaire. See how you're going on the disciplines, the spiritual disciplines. How are you going with faith and, not with faith, with prayer and fasting and keeping the Sabbath? And one of the things was in relation to the poor. How are you going in terms of your works towards the poor? And at the end of that, quite a few of us had as our weakest area helping the poor. And that was really interesting. And I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the case for a lot of Christians. What do you think? Would that be fair to say? Do you think that would be an area that we're not quite sure what to do? You know, we might do something once a year and think we've done it. Tick.
What do you think? What do you think, Megan,
think?
behind the camera?
Rhonda was on the pinnacle of telling
sorry.
us something.
Yeah,
there.
No. But God had already, I think, been preparing.
Yeah.
I think us as a team and us as a
Yeah.
church, you know, because then 3 months ago, just before Christmas, God gave me this passage. Remember, I shared it in the staff meeting, and then you guys were like, "God's been saying that to me too." And it's this verse, and it says this. So it's out of Isaiah 1, and it says, so he's talking to corrupt kings, and it says, "Does it make you a king to have more and more cedar? Did not your father have food and drink? He did what was right and just, so all went well with him." Interesting, the wisdom, Proverbs, all went well with him. And then it says, "He defended the cause of the poor and the needy, and so all went well." And then this is the verse that struck me. Is that not what it means to know me?
Wow.
And God convicted me of that. He said, "What are you doing for the poor? What are you as a church doing for the poor?"
Yeah.
Do you remember when I mentioned it? And then you were actually doing a devotion on that morning.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, you had some stuff out of Jeremiah.
Yeah.
And Susie, what happened with you? Something happened.
Was it that weekend?
Was it the family?
Well, I think that might.
Was-
I don't want to interrupt.
No,
what you're saying,
please,
but
go,
that
go,
was
go.
the weekend.
You go.
I think it was because I've been reading stuff in my devotions, and I think because I've been maybe thinking about this, and I think I'd prayed one Sunday morning. Okay, God. But it's tricky to see sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's tricky to see where the poor are.
Yeah.
Because, you look on the news and you think, okay, there's poor here or poor there in other countries. But like you said, sometimes it's cloudy, you're not quite sure. Yeah. So I prayed that morning, God, show us. And you wouldn't believe it, but that morning on Sunday, literally, at the back of our community, a family turned up and had this, literally, they'd had this terrible thing had happened, and they told us, and so as a community we were able to gather some things and do some shopping for them. And it just felt like, it felt like God was saying, "Susie, they're there, but you have to ask me and go and look." We were saying earlier about Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Are we going to choose to be in our own bubble, or are we going to have that heart? So anyway, that happened that morning, wasn't it? It was that weekend.
It was that morning.
It
was that weekend.
Knocking on all our doors.
Literally. And I think, and what was exciting was he was saying that to us personally.
Yeah.
He brought personal conviction.
Yeah.
But also as a church.
Yes,
it was what are you doing personally, and what are we doing as a church? Yeah. And then we had all these incredible opportunities that just came up literally that week.
Yeah.
So do you remember we had the refuge?
Yes.
And so we had the opportunity to help put some pamper packs together for mothers and women who were escaping violence and were going to be in a refuge over Christmas. And we had this incredible opportunity to bless them. And people were so generous. Like at Chatham, when you were saying they were so generous and giving, people were just giving so that we could buy a Christmas meal for the refuge women. How good is that? And their kids and the workers. And also give them pamper packs, just gifts to say God is thinking of you and we're thinking of you this Christmas. And when we delivered them, oh my gosh, it was amazing. Literally, I had women hugging me, and I'm like, they were just, and that's the revelation of the love of God, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's And they're like, "You're from a church, you know?" We're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you know." We didn't even mention who we were because that didn't matter. It's about God.
Yeah.
And them knowing
Yeah.
He's thinking of them and His church are thinking of them.
Yeah. That's
And that
really
was so
amazing.
beautiful.
Wow.
Powerful.
Brilliant.
Really
And then
good.
in terms of the local prison,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
that was the
that was
same,
another-
wasn't
that
it?
was the
Isn't it?
same week. That's right.
yeah, no, be excited.
Yeah, we had this, and what I love about that was a whole church thing. And you know, as a church, we value
Mm-hmm.
the church,
Yeah.
the kingdom. It's not about one church.
The
but
church in Medway.
all of
this
the
is,
church in thank you, the
Yeah.
church in Medway. And so we had some connections with the prison and some of the chaplains there, and we had the opportunity to organise for 9 different churches to sponsor, to donate money so that we could buy 1,000 donuts for all of the inmates
keeping them
in
healthy.
Rochester Prison.
Keeping
I
them
know.
healthy, didn't we?
That's
Feed them up with
Christmas,
donuts,
like
yeah.
Krispy Kremes. I really,
Yeah.
they don't get them.
No
Yeah.
way.
They don't
Yeah,
get them.
exactly.
So actually, it was
It's
real
really
treat.
special.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
How
just
fun
showing
is
it?
extra love.
And
That's
showing
it.
love, and we prayed. All of the churches prayed for a particular wing in the prison. But what was amazing, the day we dropped them in, the prison had already organised gifts that they got from Christian women's associations.
Yeah.
So we had a chance to go and give gifts out.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, this guy came up to us and he said he knew it was from the church. And he said, "I'm a Muslim. And I still have one."
Oh wow.
I was like,
wow.
absolutely, it's for everybody. God loves you, you know.
That's amazing.
And so how good's that, you know?
It's beautiful.
So, but there's been other opportunities, haven't there, guys? You were saying about.
Oh, I don't know, but I don't know if we've got time. But there's a challenge, isn't there? Because I know we've talked about this before. How do we go? And I wonder if this is what God. I know He's challenging me on it.
Yeah.
How do we go from that kind of giving to the poor to sharing with the poor? Because you know what you said, what you were reading with Isaiah about how Jesus entered in and He came.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, I think that's what God's challenging me, like over Christmas. Because He said it to me one day. I woke up and I was a bit overwhelmed, and I felt like Jesus was saying, "I come into your world, you know, Susie." Like He came in and He was there helping me with stuff that was going on in my head. And then it was like He was showing me, "I come into your world and I want you to go into other people's worlds. I don't just want you to," because I just had
put
this.
a bit of money in the
Exactly.
Money
like
is
He
an
didn't
easy
just
way to
throw
give.
money from heaven, did He? He entered. The Bible says He came into our world. So I feel like, what's that going to look like? And I have to recommend a really good book called Meal with Jesus. I can't remember who wrote it.
I think it's Tim Chester.
Yeah, and that always challenged me, because he said lots of organisations will give food.
Yes.
But what Jesus said, "You're my friends," and He sat down and He ate food with people. And I feel like, wow, if I can call people my friends and sit down, because that, like you said, spiritually poor, then that takes the whole, you know, you're poor and we're not, but we're going to make ourselves feel better. But actually, we're going to become friends, because you're a person who's the same value, but for whatever reason, we happen to have got different stuff. But Jesus says that actually He's redeeming. And I wonder, for me, I think I find myself thinking, well, why is that so tricky? And I was saying to you the other day, I think it's tricky because, as you know, I suppose because there's sin in us, and sometimes when you enter into other people's lives, it's quite messy. That's the reality, isn't it, for all of us?
It is.
And it reminds you, and you don't always want to remind and look back to where life was tricky. You kind of feel like you're going on this path, and you know, like, so getting involved with people's lives is messy.
It is messy.
That's the challenge.
It is messy,
but Jesus got messy for us.
Absolutely.
And so we have to find a way to sort of reach. I don't know. That's the challenge.
Yeah, maybe it takes us out of self, which is a problem, and that's what God did for us, wasn't He? He was a substitute, even though he's the last person that you would think should be doing that, or he didn't deserve it, but He chose to come and take that place of poverty, if you like, in all kinds of
Yeah.
ways, and be degraded.
Yeah.
So it's like standing with people, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
that thing of entering in
Yeah.
for those that don't have anyone with them or don't have a voice or nobody cares. It's that, and that's difficult for self, because we want our own preferences maybe, and the comfort we enjoy and what we've worked for and built up. We feel, well, I have a right to that.
Absolutely.
And then it's hard to the thought of giving it up. But I think God say, but whatever you give up for me, you gain back in all kinds of ways on this earth and in the earth to come. So that there is like a trade-off. You have to give and lose your life, and then you gain it. And maybe the needy, the poor, bring you face to face with that in a way that other things don't. So I think it could be that.
Yeah. And I think actually it does expose our own weaknesses, our own neediness, our own mess. You know, I think, to be honest with you, like we're all needy. Like if we're honest, we're all needy, we're all desperate, we're all broken. And actually sometimes it's so uncomfortable walking with people because it does expose your own brokenness. It does expose the reality that I don't have it all together.
That's
and I'm not perfect, and I have really bad motives. And in fact, the other day I was feeling so bad. I'd had just horrible thoughts, and God gave me this verse that it was like, God, it was, I've never read it before in the Bible, but I had. And it was, even though our hearts condemn us, God is greater than our hearts, and He knows everything. So He knows that we're needy and broken. He knows that I have rubbish thoughts and they're not holy and pure and but He loves me, and He says, don't get overwhelmed by that. So I think I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I don't
know what I'm
trying
to say.
It's where you
Does
go
that
with
make
that.
sense?
I think it's Psalm 51, a broken spirit and a contrite heart. So that's the sacrifice He likes. It doesn't mean He wants us all crushed. It means that if we're not honest with the fact that we're needy, I am broken, I need to humble myself before you, you're God and I'm not. As soon as you take a superior position above other people, or you think you're okay, you're acting in a prideful, self-centered way, that's not a sacrifice God enjoys or takes any pleasure in. But whereas when we come with that kind of attitude, it's like, brilliant, I've been waiting for you to be honest. Now I can save you, I can rescue you, I can send fire on that sacrifice, and that's a pleasing aroma.
Absolutely.
Because I'm the one that's doing the saving and rescuing. But as soon as you put yourself in a position of strength, maybe that's a bad move. So if you try and help the poor and needy out of that,
that's so true.
It's likely to be not done in faith, not done before God in love for God and love for others, and in that sense eternally not worth a lot, other than you've temporarily helped someone, which is good, better than not.
So true.
But before God,
but often we can do that because it makes us feel better anyway, and we're doing it because we feel less guilty. Whereas what you're saying is actually Jesus is saying, remember, like you're saying, we're all needy. And we're all let's just I don't know, sounds a bit naive, isn't it? Let's just be friends. But that is it, isn't it? Jesus, let's just be friends.
Well, 1 Corinthians 13, you can give all you have to the flames and give everything to the poor. And if you have not love, so the motives for things are often a muddle, aren't they?
Oh my goodness!
We have to be honest about.
Absolutely. And it's amazing because God comes really close to the brokenhearted, doesn't He? And that day I felt Him come really close when I admitted my neediness, my brokenness, and I think so I think that's why we unconsciously, I think, sometimes avoid the needy and the poor. But we also don't want to get our lives messy. As you said, Susie, it's messy. It requires time and energy and sacrifice and shifting out diaries and
you sort of feel like I can just about keep my own.
I know, literally. Exactly. I'm like, I'm like, God, I don't know where I'd fit
Yeah.
any more needy people in, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
Sweat,
There's
sweat, surrender,
Yeah.
I guess, isn't it?
it's a no answer. What we
Yeah, it's all sorted.
it's all sorted. We've saved.
That's
know
it.
what to
We've
do
sorted
now.
it all.
But
done.
actually, what do we? Because you made a really good point at the end of your notes. Is people is we really need to ask ourselves
Yeah.
before God, how do we care for the poor? Who are the poor in our? Who are the needy in our world?
Yeah.
In my life at the moment, and who are the ones God wants us to help? Because you're right, we can't help everybody, but we can help someone. And asking God to lead us. So I think asking that question.
That's right. Yeah, it could be just moving across the room, couldn't it? Like the James stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like opening your eyes that when we gather together as a church, there's people that might be needy in different ways.
Yeah.
And if people are lonely or that they're not being included, that's a good place to start, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I always think of Boaz and how the law was that you had to leave food
I
out, or
love
not
that.
food, but harvest.
Yeah.
And that's how Ruth, wasn't it? She went and she collected the stuff. And so you sort of think, how do we apply that in our life? How can I live my life so that there's enough left out? Because that's almost like they didn't say, oh, if there are poor, they just knew that poor would come and collect it. And they did. So how can I live my life in a way where there's enough excess so that, I don't know. Do you see what I mean?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great,
Thinking
Absolutely.
about how you
absolutely.
spend your time and your money, obviously is a key places to start. Is there time for other people?
True.
Yeah.
Are you too rushing in and rushing
Exactly,
out all the time?
yes.
And does all your money go on all your stuff and all the ever increasing bills that we have, and then I chuck a bit of money to the church and forget about it, or is it
entertainment,
like,
or buying new my 20th pair of new shoes or whatever.
Some people save up money
true.
in if you like pots to give away beyond just their regular giving, which is good. So there's money that people would put aside and it's just there ready, like the excess. So if there's a need, they can give to someone, they can buy something. So they're more like a channel as it's needed. So
actually, one of our guys shared a story of that recently. Like, that's what's exciting, hearing what other people in our churches are doing. And he's got a blessing pot, he calls it. And for him, it's to help people who would love to go to New Day but can't access it. And that's
exactly it. That's
the
redistribution, isn't it? Of wealth. That's amazing.
So that's
good.
So there's
great example.
Could call it the Boaz Fund.
Come on. Everyone should have a Boaz
fund. Boaz Fund.
Anyway, how do we end it? Do we end it with a bow?
Take an offering.
Sorry, Megan, how long has it been going for?